and change you'll ever get is from God. It's going to come from the Lord, or it's not going to come at all. It's going to come when you admit that you can't do it and that you've got to have His help.
How many nuclear weapons do you guys think fell out of aircraft and hit the ground in the USA? How many? How many missiles do you think? How many plane mishaps were there where a missile actually hit the ground in the USA? 914. My point again is, it's only grace holding us together. Are you guys starting to see the point? Because it's just like a couple of things happened yesterday. Nobody knows what took place because they did not print it. And truthfully, in today's world, if the press does not find out, it's hidden. Nobody's going to know until somebody says something about it. And if it happens in some isolated area, you're really not going to know. If it takes place on a military base, you can forget it. You're not going to know. If it's not airborne where people can see it, you're just not going to know. But we're talking about things that can actually decimate the population here. And these things happen all the time. So my point again is, it does not take a war to cause some type of nuclear holocaust or devastations in the earth. And I will tell you right now, given all the accidents that have taken place, is sheer grace. You don't drop a nuclear weapon from 15,000 feet and it not go off and do that about 2, 3, 4, 500 times. And it doesn't go off, but it goes through all of its changes, I'll say, and then stop by one random circuit. And one is different than the other. It'd be something if they were all the same circuit. That's not the case. That's grace. That's sheer grace, which is why they sought to decrease that number, not because they were trying to make the world a safer place, because they wanted to take the statistics down. What do you think about Russia? How many does Russia have? Russia has an unreasonable amount of nuclear weapons. Why haven't any gone off? Look at Kim Jong-un. What is he doing? Yet, they haven't had an accident to the point where it would destroy all the people around. Why? Grace. That something is clearly holding this back. What about some of the underwater mishaps? What about the times when communications went down? Communications have gone down between nations countless times. They have gone down, and there have been things that the opposite side couldn't identify. Wars almost begin, I'd say at least every 2 months or every month. Do you guys know that? Due to communications issues, authentication issues, breakdown, some sort of breakdown in passing a message. It doesn't take a war. Most people think that these something is going to be brought about in some uniform in neat fashion. That's not the case. Most things begin in chaos. Most things begin accidentally. Every war we've been in thus far started with an accident. If it weren't for that accident, we would not have gone to war. We could have possibly averted war, all the wars we've been in. But they began accidentally. Most people don't know that. And to save face, 2 of them really started taking the lives of so many. So it does not take a war to start a nuclear holocaust. I believe the Lord's been holding everything back for His own timing. He has set forth for His prophecy. And I believe that when prophecy breaks out, it's going to be such that it won't be identified. People will find themselves in the middle of a situation before they identify. They're inside of prophecy. And I believe we're in that time right now. There are too many things happening right now. It seems like grace is not like it used to be. That's what it seems like. Now, don't get this confused with the Lord's principles. He does not change His principles, but His grace is something different. He controls His own grace. He's not bound by us or what we think. He will determine the time of His own prophecies. He'll do that. In every case, man has always been wrong, save for 3 men all throughout history concerning prophecy. It's not good odds. That means everybody else miscalculated big time. They were absolutely wrong. And so when there's time, sometimes you get hung up in trying to predict exactly when something is going to unfold. No. Understand the conditions around you. And how do you do that? By actually paying attention to your brother. Pay attention to your neighbor. See what they're doing. See how they're responding to issues and circumstances, you begin to see that effect take place in multiples of humanity. And then you'll have your finger on the pulse of how they're more likely to respond. And we know if those are bad responses, they are influenced by darkness. It's that simple. And so you begin to see that all over the world, as though people are following a pattern of behavior. So much so you can circumvent that pattern of behavior anytime you see fit. And it's just like they follow a script. But back to the original point, this one statement in prophecy, where the sun suddenly shines forth in the night. We know that if the earth is turned totally away from the sun, even if it shines forth in the night over one place, it's going to be dark in another place. We already know that. But in this case, the description of a nuclear weapon exploding, being described as the sun suddenly shining at night, is pretty astounding. And we know that these guys that described this or said that, they had sailors' mouths. I don't think they were into prophecies like that. They were young people, very young people, yet they spoke that same description hundreds of, if not thousands of times in their description of actually seeing a nuclear weapon go off. I think it's amazing. And I think that we're very close to that time. Putin has put up launch systems. He's got launch systems up. The news is really ramping up rhetoric like he's limping on one side. They have to be careful. They were hit, the Ukraine was hit very hard on Christmas. Of course, the Ukraine hit Russia first on Christmas. Just so you know, just to keep it fair, that's what happened. And, he kind of struck back. So Putin right now, he said a message. See, here's the problem with the news. They like to run away with things as though Putin just said what he said he did not. Putin said something last week that they finally played this week, but the message is a week old. He has since launched attacks at the Ukraine since that time. Timing is very important to understand international politics or policy. President Putin said something last week that was recorded that they played this week as though it was just recorded on Christmas Day. That's a very sad thing. That means the rhetoric machine is high. And I'm sure that many people are confused because how many of you have heard, well, first of all, many of you heard that Putin would never invade the Ukraine, correct? Anybody hear that before? He said, no, strict training. We're not going to invade the Ukraine. You guys are crazy. Isn't that what he said? The day of the invasion, he said, no, this is not an invasion. So people I guess they act upon the news of what they hear, right? If you want the truth, you can hear the news all day, but you're going to have to request of your Lord to open your eyes. But if you ask him to open your eyes, you got to be prepared to see what you're going to be shown, because God does not do anything to pamper people. Everything is purposed in accordance to his righteousness, which, by the way, is laid out for all of us in the Bible. His righteousness is perfect. It is highly purposed, so that if he shows you something, it's going to be highly purposed, and it will do a work in the earth. So you have to be prepared to receive that answer from him, not hear from him and then reject what he said when you want to know the truth. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with propaganda. We don't discern the heart of another person. We don't do that. But you know what? We're children of the Most High. We do not have to speculate or theorize. We don't. I mean, you can if you want to, but you don't have to. You can have the truth. If there's one thing I can stress to all of you, is that you can now have the truth. You don't have to theorize. You don't have to come up with your best educated guess. You can know the truth that comes from above. Hope you guys are ready for the season of surprises. Hope you are. You know, it's been a long time since the world was taken back a bit. Hope you're ready for it. I know I'm going to help as much as I can. Get everybody prepared. Let me give you a small scenario. First of all, I'm going to say hypothetically, I'm going to give you a scenario. Something happens, and indeed, there is a discussion concerning the war in the Ukraine and Russia. But a shipment arrives, and it's set up not only in the Ukraine, but the system is mirrored with emergency We're going to have an induction of UN members. Their lands will also host a new platform during talks. And while in talks, the world's going to hear what they declare a win to, and it will not be the Most High. Then the world is going to be sick because of what they supported. Well, during that time, something will happen, a betrayal of sorts. Because I'll tell you, in this scenario, there's an individual who will not back down from his first plan. He's going to see it all the way through, whatever the cost is. Even during talks, an order will be given and executed during talks. And at that time, everybody will be caught off guard. Get ready for that scenario, because you're going to see people betray one another like never before. This will cause a deep strain in households. Now, that's a small scenario I want you to keep your eyes open for. Ultimate and very dangerous weapons will likely be used soon enough. But during that time, many will be worn out because they won't know what to trust, what to listen to. They won't trust the rhetoric anymore because they're going to come to a conclusion that the rhetoric is not consistent with what they're seeing. Then when they get tired, when people get tired of switching sides, they're going to finally start to look upon, those close to them. But by that time, the strain will have taken its toll. Many will be against each other. Many will be caught off guard because many will not prepare for the inevitable. You see, people are about to be sidetracked, thinking that somehow someone has found some sort of solution. And of course, I trust prophecy. I don't trust man's timing. I do trust the Lord's, what he gives spiritually. And I know that whenever humanity finds comfort in humanity, you better look out. It'd be different if they found comfort in the Most High, but that's not what's going to happen. They won't find comfort in the Most High. In fact, you'll likely not hear anything about the Most High, but you will hear men elevate men. That's what you'll hear. When that happens, they're also going to give it homage, and they're going to pay tribute to something. It's going to make a lot of people sick. I had hoped that people would have learned their lesson of praising man for things and just skipping God altogether. We look at each other. Every time I look at a person, I can't believe the perfection involved in a human being. And there's no way I will ever believe the evolution story, because man is in fact de-evolving from what he used to be. At any rate, people are going to be sidetracked. But you have other folks watching to see just how delusional people really are. And when they're in their delusion, things will begin to happen. But you guys remember that moment of peace, that reprieve I talked of? And I said that during that reprieve, it would be wise to get things in order. During that reprieve, when things kind of look like they're going to slow down, because they're like pulses. You get these high points and low points. This has always been from the beginning of history to this very day. But we know that a time of unrest is coming. A time of unbelievable, evil imaginations has already come, and is in fact going to reveal itself more and more every day. We also know that men love to be right, so much so that they will praise other men when they yield to the one who is right. And we're not talking about the Most High. This is all earthly figures. During that time, I hope that you guys really consider everything around you, that you're not living some imaginative world. See, because the Bible says that when they say peace and safety, you know what that means? If they say peace and safety, if they're saying peace and safety, if they're announcing peace and safety, what they're essentially saying is that we have a plan for peace and prosperity. That's what they're essentially saying. So it means some sort of solution will come forward, and one in the middle of that will give an order right in the middle of it, and everything will go upside down, and just about everybody's going to be caught off guard. When people look for things to take place, that's when nothing ever happens. But something always happens when people are not paying attention to it. In your life, when you were paying attention to something, it did not take place. It always took place outside of your timing. It'll always be that way. And what we have forming is, well, it's all encompassing. It really is. Man is going to build up a false sense of trust. They're going to trust in their own plans. They're going to celebrate this. Somehow they outsmarted everybody else, and that will simply be their flaw. So during that time, though, we're going to talk about much. This is the very time, about 10 years ago, I was speaking about that people would be caught off guard. And you guys remember me always saying, Lord, please don't let me get caught off guard. But what does it seem like now? Doesn't it seem like now that even the subjects that once held your attention, they don't really hold it anymore? It's getting very difficult for you to find truth in what you're reading. How many are going through that process? You read something and you can just see the rhetoric clearly. You can see it's rhetoric. It's a divisive tool designed to get somebody to agree with them. And that ultimately, whatever side they're on, they want to be right over the other side. All this is coming to play. It's becoming quite confusing. And I just wonder how many people are talking about the fuel. Because even right now, we have a fuel problem. Anybody read anything about the fuel as of late? Anybody? We have a fuel issue, and nobody is saying a word. Every single time we start looking in one direction, something we never looked at hits us every single time. And it's good to be sober in these days for those reasons. Get ready, from celestial happenings to actual multiple impacts. Lots of things we're going to get ready for. Now, it's going to sound outrageous sometimes, but I'm not here to be accepted by everybody. I'm here to do exactly what the Lord put me here to do. And that's precisely what I'm going to do. I don't know about you guys, but I don't like to be caught unaware. And we were warned not to let the Lord come back and catch us unaware. And in fact, those who are separated from him, he said those are the ones he'll come upon in an hour they're not thinking of. He'll be to them like a real thief, but not to us. Why? Because, if you stick around, you're going to be ready always. That means the truth has to be the center of our focus. Because if not, you'll drift in the rhetoric, in the propaganda of the world. All these distractions and mandates of the world, they're complicating the world so much. It's impossible for a person to see that they're an actual prisoner feeding a system that has a life of its own. You guys do know that, right? These systems have a life of their own. I'll show you how. If a person dies in leadership, the system says, put somebody else back in there, but the system continues to operate, correct? If somebody passes away, if a group passes away, they are replaced, aren't they? So the systems have a life of their own. They demand that their slots be filled all the time, whether we like it or not. These systems, they will always have somebody that will be there to feed it, always. So they are deeply embedded. It's something people are going to have to deal with, but they're becoming more and more chaotic. They're not as organized as they once were. They're going off the rails in the wrong way. It's kind of like the rule of law. Now, we have laws that are absolutely grotesque. We have laws that are an abomination to the kingdom of God. We have laws that fly in the face of everything. And do you guys know something? Yeah, I'm going to share this with you. Do you guys know that term, separation of church and state? Do you guys know, it's even hard to say. I think that people need to investigate that, really look into that, because what we have right now is almost like a spirit is protecting some of the vileness of the American system. The European system is protecting the vileness of it. It is protecting it and daring anybody to go against it. We're so distant from the truth of what was initially meant, and now we live by it. We live by all these false things. If the premise of something, if something is not real, yet we continue to build, we're going to have a vulnerability in the final product, and it's going to collapse. This is what we'll see. We're going to start seeing a lot of things collapse. We're just in that time. And of course, that's going to be time to geological, celestial, atmospheric happenings, mental happenings in mankind. Also, I want to share something else with you. The prophecies concerning war and wars that are coming up, they're going to be brutal, and they have been brutal. Wars are brutal, period. But more than that, they scar people who start movements. Folks, people start movements out of things. And then when those movements have begun, they take on a life of their own, causing more and more division in the home, which is where the real attack is. The ultimate target is you, what you believe in, to cause you to keep your Christianity in your pocket and not dare show it in public. But I have to remind you what the Lord said. Yeah. Folks, we have to get ready for that. It means getting your families ready. Also, do you guys know they're about to, they have a recall list? That's outrageous. You guys are going to be outraged. We have all these things happening. How do you overcome a recall list of food, right? How do you do that? What do you go in your cabinets and start throwing everything away? How do you do that? Naturally, there are certain things that are tainted, but how do you overcome it? You pray over your food. Let's go over it real quick. You guys probably already know, but I'm going to just go over it real quick. What would be the purpose of praying over your food? Some people would pray over their food so their food would just not be bad, right? And some people are bad cooks, in which case they'll pray over the food. How about this? I'll share with you why I pray over my food. I pray over my food that it nourish this body, that I may serve the Lord. I have a clause in that prayer. In fact, in every prayer that I have, there's a clause that as I'm serving the Lord, I desire the Lord to prepare the way for me. If I'm not going to serve the Lord, I do not want the Lord to prepare anything before me. Do you know why? Because I never want the way to damnation encouraged in my life. That would be an absolute disgrace for the Lord to bless me in an area that would take me right to damnation itself. So I have a clause in there, kind of like Jesus put a clause in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our sins as we forgive our debtors. So in the Lord's Prayer, if you don't forgive those who owe you an apology or owe you something, your Father in heaven will not forgive you. And I found out in life that I do not want to be blessed when I'm going in the wrong direction. Forget that, because it can happen. In fact, you can bless yourself going in the wrong direction and deceive yourself. I don't want to do that. I don't want a blessing if I'm going in the wrong direction. I want something to snap me awake so I can turn around and go right back in the right direction. Does that make sense? So with food, I desire to be nourishment for this body as I choose to serve the Lord. Not for anything else. Not so, I can enjoy a steak and not be poisoned like the next guy. No, it has to be a legitimate and honest and upright purpose behind it, or I'm not going to pray for it. It's just like me when I wake up. I used to hear a lot of people say, well, I wake up every morning. I just say, Lord, thank you I'm alive. And that's it. I thought about that when I was young. I think it was like 10 or 11, 13 or something like that. And I said, well, wait a minute. A person would pray and thank God that they're alive. To do what? To go back out in the world and to commit the same sins day after day? No. It's probably why when I used to get sick, I would get sick bad. I wouldn't get sick. When I was a little guy, I stayed sick all the time. Then it all went away. And then, of course, in my adolescent years, when I got sick, I really got sick. But as I laid there sick, one day I started to wonder about purpose. Like if I were not sick, what would I be doing? Wasting time. And I knew that as a kid. Playing games, doing that's a waste of time. It really was for me. Trying to lavish me. You know what the world teaches? The world teaches the dumbest things. They'll say, well, you got to take some me time. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. If we indeed have born-again spirits, are we not in constant communion with the Most High? So if we're in constant communion with the Most High, why would we want to separate from the Most High to be by ourselves? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Me time. That stuff will burn you out. You know why? You can't achieve it. Go away by yourself and watch what happens. See, what the world does not tell you is that you have a target on your back because your heart is toward the Most High. And when your heart is toward the Most High, you cannot turn around and look at Sodom and Gomorrah because you will turn into a pillar of salt. You'll get salty. Satan wants to destroy you. He will befriend the other ones that do not belong to Christ to use them as weaponry. So he'll promote them because they belong in his ranks. He will never promote you. He wants to destroy you. He will never accept you. Never. You'll never be by his side, no matter what you say, no matter what anybody ever says. He wants to kill you, and so does everybody beneath him. To the other ones that do not belong to the Most High, he wants to promote them. He'll protect them that they may do more evil to you. But for you, if you turn around and go back, there's nothing for you. Do you all see? A lot of people don't know that. You're marked at birth. You have different compassions at birth going through your life. You're not like the rest of the people around you. You are not. And if you turn around and turn away from the Most High, you're going into nothingness. The other ones that were used to be beside you, to your left and to your right, they can turn around all day. Satan will just promote them, not you. For you, Satan desires to kill, steal, and destroy. Well, hopefully you guys got that little part, because there is no going back. And as we endeavor, as we get closer to these days that are coming, these things that are coming, you're going to find out, if you could just look at people in the world, right? When they start doing evil things, if they get promoted, those are not, they are by no means the good ones. Actually, a person who is marked for the Lord, they cannot embed themselves in the world unless they be assigned a specific place. You know what that means? You know how you daydream, you want to just have it? Why? We all confess time is short, yet in our minds, we have these thoughts that are contrary to time being short. For example, I ask you something. How many are ready to go home and to leave the work of the Lord undone? Where would you really go if you did not complete what you were created for? You'd be just like a phone without a SIM card or battery, perfectly made, having done no work. If there's no SIM card, you cannot connect. If the Wi-Fi is gone, it's just a piece of plastic and sand. That's the truth of it. We have to be careful in these days, we do. It's going to take a lot of basics, because there are a lot of people. How many of you you're just unsettled? I'll put it this way, not unsettled. How many people lost their temper in the last month? Can I be a bit harsh? How many people reached a deep point of sadness in the last month? Because both are the same. Do you know that? Whether you be taken over by anger, so sad you can't do anything, both are the same. Because in those states, you're not doing anything. And you're not doing the one thing it takes for anybody who loves the Lord must do to make it every single day. You know what that is? You're not trusting in Christ, the one who paid the full price, the one who taught us who we are. Trusting in Him means you leave that realm of death and all the authority of the spiritual realm in His hands. God gave Him the keys, didn't He? If I were to ever get so sad that I did not want to move, that's a serious disconnect from Christ. When Christ was here on this earth, they did not know Him. He even said that, kept saying that multiple times. Christmas Eve, I kept reading random scriptures because they wanted me to read random scriptures from time to time, and I did. And in every single case, it was almost like the same theme kept popping up. And it really has to do with us really trusting Him. If the worst thing in your life happened, the worst thing in your life is still not out of control. And if it's in God's control, then it was purposed. If it's purposed, that means that was His plan from the beginning. Listen to me. And if it was His plan from the beginning, why would I be sad about His plan from the beginning? If He ordained a plan from the beginning of time, and it just now took place as it is supposed to, the only way I can be sober and in peace is by trusting Him. If you don't trust Him, you're going to say it was an accident. How can it be an accident when you believe in Christ, when we're less than 100 years old, when the same thing that happened to you has been happening all throughout time since the beginning, and God has been there and He's here too? Nothing is outside of His control. Didn't we learn that from Job? Job was defeated, but he never gave totally up. I'm not going to hit the point of Job saying, why was I born? No, because Job is an example that everything that takes place in your life has been planned from the beginning. That blind man who could not see, and finally he was healed, was incredibly happy. And somebody walked up to him and said, what was this? Did his parents do something wrong? No, his parents didn't do anything wrong for him to be blind. That's not why he's blind. Well, why is he blind then? He was blind from the beginning of the world. He was ordained to be blind because Christ was always coming from the beginning of the world. He came at that time so that that man would be there at that very time to be healed. Do you know how much has to happen for someone to be in a specific spot at a specific time with a specific problem, having a specific attitude, and then the Lord show up at that very moment with everybody around him looking. They're supposed to be there too. So that means God orchestrated their parents, had to give birth to them. And so he had to make sure that the parents got together, and he had to make sure that the parents of the parents had to get together. Do you know how much had to be coordinated to get you to this spot right now so that you would be listening on air right now with in your present condition right now, seeing the way you see right now with all of what's happening in your life right now? It had to be this way. See, we get upset because we don't know the plan. I'm going to share this with you. We get saddened because we can't see the outcome. We get upset because we don't see the purpose. I'll let you in on a secret. Because I trust the Lord. I don't need to know why. See, a lot of people need to know, why'd you do this, Lord? Why'd you do that? I don't need to know that because I believe in him. And because I believe in him, I know he's perfect in all of his ways. I know he's upright. I trust he knows what he's doing. I don't need to be in control. I don't need to know why because I have a Messiah. Don't you? I have a king. Don't you? I have a Lord. Don't you? See, every single point of my life is okay. Do you know why? Because I have a Messiah. When things are going wrong, things not managed right, I have a king. There's brokenness in my life and everything else, I have a healer. When I have nothing to stand for, anything else, he is my banner. You have one too, right? When everybody else is sitting around hopeless, I have trust. When people don't know when to run and when to stop, I just stand still. You know why? Because I have confidence in the Most High. I could walk around clueless all day and be all right. Do you know why? Because my Lord knows exactly what he's doing. And if he knows, I don't need to know because he knows. A lot of people get nervous. Well, I don't know where to go. Well, then follow the Messiah. He knows where he's going. I don't have to know where he's going. He's holy and upright because I believe in him. You see how it is to believe in someone? Knowing of him is not going to cut it. It's time to believe. Knowing of him is not going to cut it. It's time to believe. When you know of him, you're going to have insecurities. You're going to have no trust, no confidence, no anything. You're going to be nervous, scared, frightened, full of wrath, anger. You're going to think that this shouldn't have happened, this shouldn't have happened, that the devil's winning here, devil's winning there. The devil is defeated. He's a defeated foe. He's on death row, and his time is short. I don't spend my time thinking about the devil. I'm not going to give him my time. The Lord gave me this life not to contemplate him. All of what I know about these unholy things is because the Lord had me walk right through them. See, some of those things held me up in my life sometimes. You know why? Because I stopped and considered and looked. And when you consider, you look, you stop, you get stuck. Instead of doing that these days, I continue to follow the Messiah. And because I follow the Messiah all the time, the only way you can do that is to read and to commune. A lot of people know what is supposed to happen. That's what they say they know. Well, this isn't supposed, this is supposed to be that way. I quit doing that too. I'm not one of those, this is supposed to be that way people. Do you know why? The only way I can absolutely say that you are supposed to do this and do that, and I'm supposed to do this and do that, is for me to know everything. I don't do that. I have a habit now of simply thanking God for this moment and the people in this moment. Even do you know I thank God for my enemies? Because without my enemies, without them, I would have been doomed already. Do you know that? Every time I see an enemy, the Lord exposes the tactics of Satan himself. But listen, why would he ever do that? Because he demonstrates to me what he's been saving me from. Have you ever asked yourself, what did the Lord save me from? See, if you don't have a story, you can't be happy right now. You can't. You can't have joy. You can't have happiness. You can't have anything because you'll feel like, boy, this is just a boring day. You have no idea what you've been saved from in this very day, do you? If you're lifeless, hopeless, sitting there and everything is dying all around you, that's because you're not thankful. If you're thankful, it's impossible to be dead at the same time, isn't it? Only the living can be thankful. The dead know nothing. Well, I'm sure I heard that before. Oh, yes, in the Bible. Oh, and by the way, God is the God of the living and not the dead. So never claim yourself as dead. When you see your enemy, when you learn of somebody else's sad story, their sad story is what you've been protected from, what you've been spared from. That bad news you heard is what you've been spared from. You'll have your days where you have to go through things. And when you do go through something, the only reason you go through it It's because at that time your Lord is with you. But if you don't know that, that's when the fear sinks in. When you know the Lord is with you and that's the only time you can actually go through something, oh, see, that changes everything. What if you found out that in order to go through an issue or a problem or a circumstance, the Lord had to be with you, or you could not go through a problem, a circumstance, or an issue? Wouldn't that be something? That would change your life, wouldn't it? What if nothing bad could happen to you without the presence of the Messiah in your life, and near you, and paying attention to you? Huh? See, that's the difference between understanding principles and not even knowing about them. You can't go through anything lest the Messiah be right there. You can't, and you won't. But when you do go through something, who's there with you? The Messiah. Not because it mirrors the story with Peter and the apostles on the boat in the storm. No, it's because of a different principle. And we haven't gone over that yet. I guess that saying is true. Save the best for last. See, when you don't know these things, your day is different. You're simply in the flesh. When you do know these things, that's when you can be in spirit. You know that word inspired comes from the phrase in spirit. Inspired in spirit. We're one in the same. My inspiration is that all of you can see what I see. There's no way. See, you may think, well, Mike, the reason you are so uppity is because things are going right. No, they're not. If we could trade places right now, you would say, nope, Lord, put me back in my problem. I don't want that guy's stuff. You put me back in my issue. Let me deal with my stuff. I can't deal with that. What's he dealing with? What is that? That's what you would say. You would say, nope, I don't want that. The truth is, I've learned a great deal through issues because I don't reject. See, when something happens, do you guys know I don't rebuke it? I don't have to rebuke anything that happens because it cannot happen outside of the control of the Most High. I do something else. I don't rebuke it. I never have to. The Lord has already rebuked darkness on my behalf. I don't have to. I don't have to. That's when you're acting on your own. I'm not doing that. I'm following the Messiah. I'm not walking in the woods by myself, trying to be my own Messiah. That's not what I'm doing. And I do not live life by the grapevine. I don't do that either. My life is a testament to that. And people ask me the same things all the time. You will too, very soon. You're going to say, there's no way in the world. That's what you'll say. There's no way. I'm not joking. That's precisely what you'll say. And then you'll say, I don't understand. And well, of course you don't. But all you have to do is follow Christ. See, there are some, listen to me close. Sometimes people can tell a good word, but it's a difference in telling a word and walking out that word. That's a big difference. See, you can't tell when a person is going to walk out the word or not, but you can always tell where the gospel's been. Do you know how? Because signs and wonders follow the gospel of Jesus Christ all the time. Wherever the gospel has been, you better believe there's a sign and a wonder right there. If the gospel has been with you, something wondrous will always take place. You just have to make sure it's the gospel. Not rhetoric, not biblical statements and phrases and scriptures, but the gospel, specifically the gospel. It has to be the gospel. If it's not the gospel, it's not the work of Christ. The prophets did their work. The prophets were paving a way. John the Baptist paved a way. The apostles carried the gospel. Jesus carried the gospel. The gospel is different from reading a host of scriptures, and it is the gospel that is to go out all over the earth in the gospel of the words of Christ. See, in this day and age, you got to be careful of that because some have never, they don't preach the gospel. They just don't. They're preaching something else. It is not the gospel because the gospel comes from Christ Jesus. Signs and wonders follow the gospel. They always do. All of us have to learn that. Folks, listen, it is 5 till, and before I totally collapse, actually, I'm kind of getting excited. I get excited sometimes I'll talk about this. You know why? Because somebody's going to hear me, and somebody's life is going to turn around. Because there'll also be witnesses of what it is to experience. One big key lesson, folks, is this. If you're having one of those down days, one of those sad days, right? Normally it's because you cannot see what you have been saved from today. Remember that. Every time you hear a news story, you guys hear about the Ukraine every day, but you're not in the Ukraine. Those of you in the Ukraine who pop by here at COT, right? Those of you, be thankful your situation is not worse. You may say, well, how can it be worse than that? Trust me, it can be worse. God could have had you be born anywhere. You could have been anyone on the face of the earth. You could have been in a worse place than what you are now. Your situation, your sickness, whatever it is, could have been tenfold what it is right now. You could have been a different nationality and had zero freedom. You could be held against your will right now. You could be locked away in a dungeon right now. I pray you're thankful. Just think about that. Your situation could always be worse. It's just like that school bus story. You know the story I tell about with the kids on the school bus? How that an angel went before that school bus. Turned the sign, that arrow they said go straight, he turned it. And when they got to the arrow, they never knew anybody turned it, and they took a left because they didn't know that the road abruptly came to an end, that it was a sinkhole there. And if that bus had continued going in that straight line, everybody would have died. The kids gave no thanks. The bus driver gave no thanks. They just simply made that turn. They had no idea an angel went before them and changed the sign. See, because if they would have seen, if they learned about the angel going before them, changing the sign, they would have all rejoiced. But they didn't. And so it was life as usual. If your life is life as usual, it's because you're not knowledgeable of what you have been kept from, what the Lord kept you from falling into. He tells us in the Bible, Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy. You don't think if the Lord let him loose, he wouldn't devour you right now? He can't do that anymore. And the Lord has also kept us from causing our own doom. You ever notice why you can only go so far in certain things? And conviction gets the best of you. Those are limiters. Be thankful. You have an ability to see the truth of your life. You don't have to do the what-if scenarios. All you have to do is think in your mind, if I would have kept on this path, and the Lord will show you what would have happened. You don't have to do the what if. You never have to do that. See, one of the problems is we try to control too much. Don't try to control everything. Render to the Most High what is the Most High's. Be responsible, a good steward, but don't seek to control everything. It's time for many of you to give up control. Give it up and be free of it. It's making you grumpy. You don't want to be grumpy old people, do you? Give it up. Let the Lord have it, because he already gave you a command to do so. If you're that heavy, you're not obeying it. You may say, well, I have some real heavy things in my mind. Don't wear your trauma as a badge. You know what that is? You know what it is to wear your trauma as a badge? The world says, but you got to talk to somebody about it. No. You know how people jump on the phone and they have to tell somebody something about their day because they'll explode inside if they don't? It's because they honestly believe they're going to feel better if they vent. Wrong. Venting is nothing but tale bearing. That other person on the opposite side of the phone cannot help you. You don't want the answer from them anyway. You're looking to share your sorrow with somebody else who can complement your sorrow, because you will reject their counsel. Don't put somebody in that position. Take your issues to the Lord. Don't take it to your next door neighbor. Don't take it to Facebook. Take it to the Most High and say, Lord, show me what to do. Because how many people have talked about their problems to a friend that didn't even say a word? And then when they tried to tell you what to do, you can't even remember what they said. How many people just have to tell somebody else about what they just saw? Why do you think the Lord allows you to be put in those situations? He's giving you a chance and opportunity not to take that story to somebody else. The day you don't take it to somebody else is the day you have matured. The day you take it to him is the day you're beginning to trust in an area you have never trusted him in. Think about that. All these temptations in the world. What did Jesus tell us? He said a man is drawn away and tempted of his own lust. You know what that means? You can only be drawn into something that's already within you, something that you already want to do. You have a desire to do it. You got to get rid of that desire. How do you break a desire? You take that whole desire not to your friends to corrupt them and everybody else. You take that to the Most High. You take it to the Lord. You take it to him. You've never taken that to him. How many of you went in your secret place and talked to the Lord just like you were talking to everybody on Facebook? See, we wouldn't do that, would we? You know what that means? Let me just be harsh. That means we're not real with the Lord. How many go pray with the Lord and then they start using the thous and the these, but they don't do that to their next door neighbor? When the Lord said, what you have done unto these, you have also done unto me. So we talk to the Lord with our perfect Old English, but we talk to one another with slang and everything else. But let me tell you something. What is he receiving? He's receiving what you have talked to the other person about. You didn't know that? When we go to him in a falsehood, he's not going to hear that because it's born out of hypocrisy. When we talk to somebody else, some other living being in the world, he's the recipient of our words, and he always will be. I want you to know that. That's your wife, that's your girlfriend, that's your children. See, that's a principle nobody ever covers. He is the recipient of everything you say to somebody else. That's why he said, do unto others. He said, do unto others as you would do unto me. In other words, he said, if you render servitude, render your servitude to another person as you would render servitude unto me. Because in truth, whatever you're doing for somebody else or against somebody else, you're doing for Christ or against him. If you chew out your neighbor, you just chewed out Christ. Boy, that'll make you handle everything differently. Somebody asked me the other day, they said when they were talking to me because they were about to give up, they said, why do you fight so desperately when somebody's about to give up? And I told them about the cross. I thought about this one time. I said, what if Jesus, when he said, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? When he said, Father, if it be possible, take this cup from me. What was he thinking? And we don't hear anything else. But there was also a part of him saying, no, we're going through with this. Don't you dare give up, because it's all for them. Somebody fought the good fight. Christ fought the good fight. That was his nature of his flesh. The nature of his flesh was just like yours and just like mine. In the Bible, it says he was tempted in all points as we are, but without sin. That means the same thoughts were coming to his mind. Satan tried to play the same tricks, but his spirit rose up. That's the difference. That's the part that fights the good fight. That's when your flesh says, what's the point? And your spirit rises up and says, stand up and fight the good fight of faith. You know who you really are? You are not your flesh. You're not the one that's saying, I give up. You're not the one that says, I gave in. You're not the one that messed up. You're the one that stood up. You're the one that said, Lord, I receive you. I believe what you did at the cross. You're the one that desires to do more. That's who you are. You're the one trapped in that flesh for a time, but one day you will be free from it and from all of its influences. You're the spirit in that flesh. Your flesh is the old man. You are the new one. That's why in the Bible, when one of the apostles was speaking, he said, now when I sin, it is no longer me that sin, but the flesh. Why would he ever say that? Because he had no desire to sin. He had a strong desire to do holiness, but he said where good was present, evil was there too. Where I would do good, there'd be evil there. He was talking about the resistance of his flesh, but inside, his spirit was crying out to do righteousness. His spirit had human reactions, but he fought every day to subdue it. That's why in the Bible it says, die to the flesh daily. That's every day of your life. When your flesh rises up, you stand up spiritually. That's fighting the good fight of faith. That's who you are.